Well, welcome everybody. I'm Matt Garrett. It's Sarita Parikh. And we're super excited to be here. One, because it's actually our home for Agio. And so it's really fortunate that we've got a chance to be here talking with a lot of our team members as well as the broader Minneapolis-St. Paul culture. One of the things we're going to talk about, of course, is AI. And I don't know if you guys have seen the latest commercial. It's like a bunch of talking heads and everybody's AI. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but I kind of feel like we want to make sure we avoid that, but it's hard not to in this day and age. So we're going to dive in a bit. One of the things that we really firmly believe in our business, and we work with a lot of HR leaders across Fortune 100, 500 companies, and they're all forced with, same types of conflicts that you all are, which is we've got this emerging technology in AI and trying to really understand how does it not just innovate and not replace people, but how does it become a tool that actually brings out the best in our teams? On top of that, you've got this still the kind of the feel of post-COVID culture being rebuilt. You have got a new entry in the workforce, which is Gen Z in earnest, and they have different types of expectations. Then you've got skill set development happening, and all of that is now being pressured. Again, I'm telling you things you already know, probably day in and out, on your roles. And how do you then react to all of that and still, end of the day, drive your business forward, create an environment that is productive for your teams, your business, and your main objectives. And that's something that we constantly work with our clients about. So we're going to talk today about how we're viewing that space and how we actually think it can be built more intentionally. So there are a couple things we're going to get out of this session, because any type of environment or any type of presentation, I want to make sure you guys get like tactical things to walk away from. So we're going to give you two things. We're going to give you two frameworks, and then we'll give you a deck. Anybody who wants to have this material, please, we'll share it at leisure. But we're gonna give you two frameworks to think about. And then we're gonna show you a real life innovation effort that we're making. So Sarita and I were lucky enough at the beginning of the year, we presented at From Day One's conference in Atlanta. And right afterwards, we had a lot of the participants come up and say, oh, hey, how does that work in practice? And so in parallel, what we've been doing with our technology teams is an innovating product. And so that's, of course, Sarita's angle. And so we're going to show a bit of where that innovation is moving. So you can see that it's not theoretical ideas, but you can see it come to life in a way that technology is enabling a new set of working relationships. So I think we introduced ourselves. I don't know if anything else you want to say?
Well, one thing to build on what Matt just said. So we're all inundated in AI. There are times when I'm like, can I just get 10 minutes where no one actually uses that acronym? And so one thing about all of this is that we still work with humans. Like, what motivates a person now is the same kind of stuff that motivated people 10 years ago, and is the same kind of stuff that motivated people 100 years ago. So we are like biologically wired as humans. And so one of the things that we really go deep on, what I especially go deep on, is understanding from the perspective of leaders, from managers, from employees, what is it that really shapes how work feels? Like, what is it that lifts people up? What drives engagement? What helps them feel appreciated, connected to other people? What helps them feel like they're growing? Appreciation, connection, and growth are like the three cornerstones of like a healthy engagement. And so if you want productivity, how do you help sort of bring out the best of what makes humans humans while AI augments and supports the rest? So I'm excited to talk about that today.
Yeah, that's great. So why don't we talk about the first thing, where this is an opportunity for us when we think about today's environment and where kind of normal or historical practices fail. It's a moment that we all can relate to. I don't know if you want to kind of set the table on that.
Yeah. So on this idea of being human, so we are, wired evolutionarily. We have a lot of social norms, especially in the US. We have a lot of behavioral norms. And so in that, trying to understand context, like what does it feel like to be a leader? What are some of the biggest challenges managers face? What are some of the things that lift people, employees? What sort of drags them down? And in that process, we've done, I think probably I've done nearly 100 interviews with people really going deep, really trying to understand what shapes how work feels. And I've talked with senior leaders, with managers, and with employees. And there's a story theme that has shown up again and again. And I'll tell you a real story, like a real interview that we had, change the names, but it's something that's shown up again and again. So I spoke with this woman, Emily. She's not her real name, a data analyst, and she was a rock star. She was great at what she was doing. Every role that she had, or every data analysis project she had, she grew, she learned more, she had really happy clients working with her. And so after about 12, 18 months of this, she felt like, gosh, I'm ready for more. So she prepared, she went to her one-on-one with her boss, Zach. And she was like, Zach, I've really grown a lot. I think you can put me into a bigger role, put me in coach kind of thing. And Zach was super excited. He's like, yes, I am vested in your success. Like when you do well, I do well. Let's do this. And they had this great one-on-one. They talked about potential mentors for Emily. They talked about potential growth opportunities, ways that she could get more exposure. And she left this one-on-one jazzed. She was like, this is great. I've got this boss. He's sponsoring me. He left and he's like, I'm jazzed. This is great. But he had about 2 seconds before he went on to his next thing, totally unrelated to Emily. So then 2 weeks pass and they have probably what we all have, 2 intense weeks of work where you're context switching all the time. You've got a lot of stuff going on. They come back to the next one-on-one and Emily comes in and she's like, hey, Zach. And Zach says, what's on your mind? And she says, well, I'd love to continue that conversation we just had 2 weeks ago. So Zach freezes and he's like racking his brain. And he's like, what did we talk about? Yes, growth. And he's like, I'm sorry, Emily, can you just remind me what we talked about in more depth? Right? So how deflating for Emily and how deflating for Zach, because he went in with this intention. And so there's something about retaining the context, particularly in how busy we are and how to do that effectively.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing as we move forward. It's the idea that, right, it wasn't Emily's performance that dropped. It wasn't, Zach's intent that he wanted to. It was the system that didn't hold the context to allow Zach to manage what we run into all the time. We're so focused on the number of things we have to do. And a lot of times, especially when you add in the number of employees that we as managers have to actually engage and try to grow, it just becomes insurmountable. And that context is often lost. And that's where we want to kind of leverage is this opportunity. Whoops, sorry. Use the tool right.
So we have talked with a lot of Zachs over the years. And Zach, to your point, is sincere. There is a lot of really strong and consistent willingness and eagerness to help your team members grow. Many of you have probably experienced this. But the reality of today is that managers tend to be working managers. So it's not just that their role is to support their staff and grow their staff. They have their own deliveries. They have the director above them who's asking for some paperwork, and that director has some VP above him who's needing to see this analysis. They might have more staff than they've ever had before. And so with all of that, from one thing to the next thing, it's incredible amounts of context switching. It's an incredible workload. On the context switching, we've seen it's routine for people to cover 5, 6, 7 different topics in a single day. I remember for myself, earlier in my career, I had times when I would have 13 different meetings on 13 different topics in a single day. It's depleting. At the end of the day, I was like, I just want to lie down on the couch, I want a beverage, and I want to turn my brain off. It's too much. And so all of this comes back to the idea, to your point, is that when you hear about Zach, I don't think that's a capability problem. Zach is sincere. He wants to do right by his team. But how can we help him be successful? So it's not a capability challenge. I really think this is a scalability challenge.
And this is kind of where HR comes into play, right? It's this, as I mentioned, all the levels of complexity that you're working through, all the variety of issues that are kind of influencing and challenging work cultures itself. We are now being asked to do something really challenging. On top of all that, it's how do you actually create scale in connecting your workforce? How do you support the growth of the individuals, which all of our employees want to continue to be better every day, to get new skill sets, to take on new challenges and be successful. How do you do that at an individual level? How does it become personalized? How do we find those opportunities where we can grow, but that growth looks different for every individual? And then the last point is, how do you actually keep those key contributions? The dialogue between Zach and Emily and their challenges of like, hey, I want to be able to feel like my contributions matter. And on top of that, it's through hybrid environments or environments where I'm maybe not in place, or I'm a remote employee that I'm still want to feel connected into the culture. How do I do that in an effective way? And this is where we have to move beyond just programs, because culture is not something that we're going to solve through an individual program. It actually has to be a fundamental shift. And that's where kind of the systems, especially AI systems, again, we'll speak to that, allow that to happen and support the human behavior and have that human behavior fit at an individual level. Sorry, that would be the mic. So one of the first things I mentioned, this is your first takeaway of our session. It's a framework that we've been introducing and kind of running with the last couple of years. It is what we call the cultural connection flywheel. The flywheel is made up of 4 basic principles, but the objective of it is to be able to systematically connect them that allows this to reintroduce this idea of belonging, which everybody, as I said, post-COVID, or introduction of a new workforce, a new element to the workforce, new introduction of technologies that almost in theory kind of will challenge the humanization of it. But belonging is, end of the day, what most employees are looking for in their day-to-day connection with their employer. And so we do that by relying on 4 basic principles. 1, recognition, and recognition that resonates, make sure it's impactful. 2, it's connection that counts, meaning the relationships have to actually allow trust, shared experiences, and mutual support to happen. Participation, which is participation that matters. So I feel like I want to contribute to more. And that's where I think when you get to an employee who's really wants to be effective is when they feel like their contribution in day-to-day is not just about what's good for me, it's about what's good for us. They want to feel like they're connected to something larger. And the last piece is growth that inspires. This is developmental pathways that feel unique to me, that I can see that materially go. And so these 4 elements worked together, and we'll show you how it comes to life, but all of them kind of help build momentum, and that momentum is what reinforces belonging.
So with those, one of the things that probably you all see, but I think it's probably the toughest part to solve in terms of scale, is that engagement doesn't come from these like big events. So you might have like quarterly reviews where everyone's in town together, or maybe you have big annual picnics, annual surveys, all kinds of different events. Those are incredibly replenishing. They bring people together, they help people connect. But then when you leave and you go back to the day-to-day, the engagement can fade very quickly. And so the question at hand is, how do you help sustain that engagement on a day-to-day basis? On any given day, moments to appreciate and connect and grow and participate, there are probably multiple of those moments. But knowing they exist, understanding that they're worth taking action on is pretty hard when people are as busy as they are. And so what we focus on is how do we help scale? I think this is probably the keynote for almost everyone, is how to help create cultures and environments where you can scale those moments, where you can actually see them and then act on them. Culture doesn't fade in the sense of like you miss one moment and you've like damaged it, typically. But if you consistently miss moments, then it just sort of fades over time and people become disengaged. If you can find them enough, you can sustain culture. And then we all have probably seen times and places where when those moments are celebrated often, like maybe even daily, that's the kind of place where you just feel like every day feels great. Every day feels like a win. And you're excited about the next day. And so our goal is focusing on how do we help drive engagement in the day-to-day within the context of how people work, where they work, and what they're doing.
And so to build on that, how do we actually bring it to an individual level? Framework number 2 our gift to you, is a framework called the Drivers of Engagement. And so this allows us to really understand what is unique to an individual, participant, employee, manager, is really understanding what motivates them. And so this is actually it's been something that we've invested in for really like the last 15 years, coming out of kind of consumer experiences and what motivates a connection between individual and, whomever, employer, brand, what have you. And these are five distinct attributes, drivers that we really look to support. And so when we develop initiatives and systems and programs, we're trying to figure out can we devise them that hit on each one of these drivers? So it connects, because you can look at them individually, right? And say, okay, what's most important for me is I'm really about, give me time, right? Recognize that I actually have a life outside of work, and give me opportunities where I can balance that out. That's most important to me versus, some type of reward. But every individual has different levels of focus and importance on each one of these drivers. The goal is actually, how do we layer it in as we think about engaging employees to be really effective? This allows us to get personalized. It allows us to actually make a big influence, is when we design programs, systems, cultures that take into account these 5 attributes. Because really, it's, as I said in the bottom here, right? The problem isn't that leaders don't care about these drivers. It's what happens is that the systems and the demand on it don't allow us to really understand the uniqueness of it and take advantage of it as we're kind of engaging and building our employee cultures.
And we know that this is a great place for AI to be helpful. As we kind of go back to, we are humans, we have human emotions, we have human drivers. And so one of the big questions is about how can you use AI to be effective at what it does, but not infringe on what it means to be human. So AI, probably in that sort of area of how to scale, it's about helping to scale, go to the next slide, helping to scale what people need to know at the moment that they need to know it. So when we think about it, we want to make sure we're never, we've all experienced AI slop, right? Everyone in this room has gotten an AI-generated email where you just think, it almost might be more negative to get something like that than to get a sincere message. So how do we help make sure that the constraints are around authenticity, around value, around not replacing human judgment? So of course, AI can help surface context. It can connect dots and signals over long periods of time, over groups of people, and it can help bring up the right thing at the right time, because at any given moment, there might actually be a dozen different signals that are relevant, but maybe not important enough to bring in front of you.
Yeah, and this is where we tie AI back to the flywheel, right? It becomes that accelerator, right? It does, to Sarita's point, captures the moments, so it allows us to make sure that context isn't lost. It surfaces insights, right? It actually brings connection information that becomes really intentional rather than just accidental, because the context is layered into it. And last piece, it supports consistency. So cultures only scale that, when those systems remember what matters and presents it in the right way. And so we're going to talk you kind of very quickly through a quick overview on how we actually bring this to life. So this is an advanced look, kind of an innovation look into where we're moving forward with our technology, just because I wanted to kind of show in how we're actually layering in the flywheel, the frameworks into the experience. So this is a Slack instance for Maria. Maria is actually a sales manager for automobile company. And she's then promoted and indicated with an opportunity to drive performance. She, in the process of looking at what's happening, she actually uses an opportunity to create a recognition of live. So the system prompts itself to connect into, present information that she can act on, and then allows her to then facilitate a very targeted communication out to her team, and then the process identify an overperformer. And then within the flow of it, she's able to she's provided information on how to produce that recognition, and then being able to send that out to David. And then David is able to receive that, feel like he's identified. It's, it's suggested, the system suggested, allow that recognition to happen. She can customize it and then move forward.
And so Maria's kind of the big boss, and she can cascade down goals, as we all probably have experienced. And so John, like Zach from earlier, John is a working manager. He got a set of goals from his boss, and he could use help on making sure that he achieves those. And he helps his team achieve those. And he does it in a way that actually helps foster connection and appreciation, growth amongst his team. And so this is a great use of AI, where it can say, it doesn't step in and it doesn't lead on behalf of John. But what it can do is it can say something like, there are signals that engagement has actually gone down over the last few days, which is something that you can detect. There are signals around like what we know enough about each person on your team as to what might drive them. So back to the 5 drivers, what are they people who really like being intrinsically rewarded? Are they people who like it being extrinsically rewarded? Are they people who like, what are, their kids and their dogs? Like, what are the things that most help connect with them? And so this is a great way of just bringing to surface what you should know at the time that you need to know it. And then letting you as a human, as a leader, take over and actually have the interactions with your team. And then from an employee perspective, what that feels like is that, of course, employees are the people who ultimately need to deliver for us. And so how to make sure that, back to the 5 drivers, that in the experience you feel like you were seen, you're not getting things that feel out of left field, but actually are resonant for you. In this case, this person is an outdoors person, and so they're really motivated by hiking, and actually I think Taylor Swift might be in here somewhere. But really helping people feel like they are, it's not a one size fits all. They get the pieces of information, they get the guides and the nudges that are relevant to them.
And so I know we actually are out of time, but we want to kind of end with a basic statement, which is, hopefully we've been able to give you a couple of frameworks that allow you to think about design, and an illustration on how you actually can create scale using the AI tools. I think powering them with the right technology is super important, because it's not just about scaling work, right? It's actually about scaling the sense of belonging. So with that, we will close and appreciate your time. I would also suggest, if you guys want to go deeper into some of the illustrations on how we are seeing the workplace changing and where AI comes in, we have our booth set up afterwards or at a break. Please stop by. We're more than happy to go a bit deeper. It's hard to see that from in the broad auditorium, but we can go and spend a bit more time on that. So anyways, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.